Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whether you're on a Saturday or a Sunday. It's nice to have you on our live stream today. Well, today we have an interesting subject with regards to grief and separation. What happens though if we can't talk to somebody? They may have been shunned. We may be really struggling with that. Are there things that we can do? Can we actually cope with that? Well, today we're going to be talking with Astarte, and she's going to help us analyze different things with regards to grief and separation. So welcome to the live stream, Astarte.
Hi.
Do you have something in your background?
Yes, somebody next door has just started using a garden machine.
Oh, great. No, that's good. And how's your day been?
Fantastic. I've been in the garden, not making noise.
Oh, okay. You'll have to send us a photo one day.
Could do.
Very good. All right. So grief and separation. We all suffer with it.
At some time or another, yes, we do.
Yep. We can cope with it sometimes not. And other times it's very short in duration with regards to how we're feeling and how we can cope. And then we start getting back on the road, as it were, and it doesn't affect us as much. What's your take on grief and separation?
Grief is the experience we go through when we are separated from someone we love. Whether it's a separation of a live person, as in being shunned, or whether it's the loss of somebody due to death. So the key thing is to just recognize that it's a feeling that we all get. It's a response to that loss, that sense of loss.
Yeah,
that's what grief is. Did you want me to say more?
So how does it tie in with the separation aspect of it?
Well, whenever we are separated, whether by physical death or as in the case with witnesses, it's a very common thing that people are shunned. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody in an organization like that, though. I can give a personal example in that my daughter, 5 years ago, decided that she didn't want me in her life anymore. Nothing to do with a religion, more to do with a personality conflict. And from her perspective, she felt that she didn't want me in her life anymore. So I don't get to see my grandchildren. I had to do a lot of work to process that. It was a very sad time for me. I still miss seeing the grandchildren.
Yeah.
But I've moved on from there, and that's something that I will discuss today.
Sure.
I think, and there's a person also I noticed who posted today in Facebook, Gary Alt. And he gave a beautiful story of how he has dealt with finding out that he's a granddad and not having the relevant contact. And Gary said that he would come and say a few words about that today. So can we bring Gary in?
Gary, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Nice to have you on at short notice. We really appreciate that. So, like Astarte said, you've posted something in the Life After group. Tell us a bit about it. Okay.
First of all, my apologies for the video feed not working, but anyway, you don't want to see me anyway. Just to fill you in on a little bit more, not too long, but basically, my then wife, when I was still in, basically convinced my kids and my parents. Well, she tried to convince my parents that I was dangerous, that I was on my way to hurt them and maybe even kill them. I don't even know what the story was. My parents didn't believe it, and I, in fact, visited them that weekend. But my kids, swallowed it hook, line, and sinker, as all the JWs did. They just said, "Oh my God, what's the matter with him?" So she convinced them to be scared of me, and so it got pretty crazy. So that's a little background on it. About 3 or 4 months ago, I decided, because my my mother was going through some cancer treatment, and she's 87 years old, and my dad was not in very good health either. And I thought it's time that my kids know about their health issues, because they basically decided that the whole alt side of the family is somehow to be avoided, even though I'm the only one that's a witness. My wife just convinced my ex-wife just convinced them that the whole side of my whole side of the family is just bad, So they didn't really hardly have contact with my parents. Well, I sent an email to my 3 kids telling them that you might want to reach out to grandma and grandpa, because and I told them about the health issues. And I got a message. I have no idea if anybody's going to read that or respond to it in any way. There's just no way to know. I just know that they shunned me, but I just figured this is something I have to tell them. And by the way, I respect the whole arrangement in the sense that I feel that if I overdo it, or in some way that would be inappropriate to them, try to reach out to them, like, I don't know, send cards, flowers, call them, this and that, I just think it would make matters worse, because they'll think Dad's really lost his mind now. He has no respect for the arrangement, doesn't even know who Jehovah is, and all that kind of stuff. So I just kind of put it all on hold. Well, in this case, I thought I needed to tell them. Somebody needs to tell them that grandma and grandpa are in very serious health, have very serious health issues. So I did. So my youngest daughter wrote back to me saying that one of them, the email didn't work. So she said that she kind of told her brother and sister about it, and they will be reaching out to grandma, which they did. And the only reason why I know that is because my mother called me, like a week later, to tell me that she spoke to each one of the kids, and that they even sent her a bouquet of flowers. It was just a beautiful, beautiful flower arrangement. So I think if I remember right, I think I sent them all a very brief email just saying, thank you so much for sending the flowers to grandma and grandpa. I'm very proud of you. And that's all I said. I just try to keep it short and sweet, with real positive, genuine emotion, but without treading into any territory that might be controversial or ruffle feathers or whatever. So fast forward, when my mother calls me to tell me that they sent her the flowers, she also told me that my daughter is pregnant. Well, my reaction was kind of 5 seconds of silence, or whatever. And I think my mother knew why. She said, I know you have no contact with the kids, but really you can be happy about it, because it's a new life coming into the world. And I said, well, Rom, I understand that. And it is nice news, but it's just sort of disturbing. And this is why I started out by telling you about the story that they bought from my wife about how I was dangerous, because I'm convinced that she probably struggled with the idea of, should she tell me or not? What if Dad comes to hurt the baby or hurt, this is the way they think. And so that's what's really, really very disturbing about it. So I just didn't know what to do about it. I talked with my girlfriend, and she said, and she's an ex-JW, so she understands the issues. And she said, well, why don't you, get some clothing, or, some baby clothing, and send it to her, And I said, yeah, that's a nice idea. Well, I didn't do it until, like, what was it, a month ago? And for several months, I sat on that idea, and I said, well, she's not due till April 4th anyway, so there's no emergency. So as far as I know, she doesn't even know that I'm aware that she's pregnant, And I finally got it into my head one day. I get these little epiphanies every so often where I just say, I want to do something, whether it's write a song or do some whatever. So one day I just said, hey, where did you tell me that we should shop for clothes? And so we went and we bought stuff for newborns, 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. And I sent this whole box down there. And by the end of the week, I think it was probably the day that they received it, or maybe the next day, I get an email from her that just simply said, we got the box of clothing. Thank you very much. And that was it, short and sweet. And I don't remember if I responded to that email or not, but I was aware that the due date was April 4th, and today is what, the 11th, I guess.
Yep.
So, well, today it's the 10th where I am. So yesterday, the 9th, so 5 days later, I get a message from my daughter saying the baby was born. Her name is whatever. And that's it. Just this short two short sentences, email. Well, again, I don't know how to take that, because that's all first of all, it took her 5 days to tell her father that a baby was born. And she didn't say anything about she weighed 7 pounds 2 ounces and she's beautiful and, oh, you'd be so happy, just this little. So I was taken aback by it, but at the same time, I have to be happy with the fact that she contacted me at all, because I don't know if that's going to happen. So I just was like, calm down. And again, I have my girlfriend here that calms me down sometimes. It's not all me, because believe me, I could go off the deep end. It's pretty easy to do. So I said, yeah, you're right. It's, let's take the positive thing out of it. She did contact me and I am a grandfather. That's terrific, So the next thing I did was, I just said, oh, I'm so happy to hear that. And I'm proud of you and your husband, and I hope everybody's healthy and doing well. And again, she didn't respond to that. I guess there was no response for it. But then my girlfriend said, didn't she send a picture? And I said, no, maybe she doesn't want me to know what the baby looks like, or she's afraid I'm going to post the picture on Facebook or something. I don't know. So I thought, you know what? Why don't I just add? So I just sent her a real brief message that said, everybody here in Montana is wondering where are the pictures, and I'm kind of wondering too. Like kind of lightheartedly, and so she sent me a picture. Nothing, no text, no the baby weighed whatever, the baby is 23 inches long or whatever babies are. Just the picture, but it's a beautiful picture, and so I kind of sat on that for a while, and then again my girlfriend said, why don't you say, again, this, I should think of these things, but I'm a knucklehead when it comes to my own personal relationships. So she said, well, just tell her, oh, what a beautiful baby, and relate it to her, like say, oh, it reminds me of when you were born and we were so happy to see you and you were so beautiful and this and that. And I said, yeah, I will, but it really took me half the day to even get up the gumption to do it, because I'm always afraid that something I say is going to be irritating or offensive or something, So I just really kind of just did like 3 or 4 short sentences that just said, thanks so much for the picture. She's absolutely beautiful. And I said something about, it reminds me of the day you were born. And especially, we were especially happy because we knew that you were our last, because, we made sure of that. And that was it. And that's all I did. So that's the end of the story up to now. And there's a little bit more of a tagline to it. I don't know if you want me to stop for a minute.
No, go for it, Gary.
Well,
it's a good story.
Well, then we've been wrestling with the idea of it's about I don't know, 2,700-mile trip or something to where she lives, and my parents live north of there. So we've been struggling with the idea of with COVID, do I visit my parents yet? I haven't got my second shot yet, and and now what about the baby and my daughter? Will they even want me to be there if I broach the idea? Will she think I've lost my mind? Like, of course I don't want you to come here. How dare you? I have no idea. And my mind tends to go down the dark alleys from time to time, And so again, my girlfriend just suggested that maybe you could drive them there with your parents. So basically, what I was thinking is, I'm going to wait till like the week after I get the second vaccination. And then I'm just gonna put all I'm gonna do is just write her an email and say, hey, I was thinking I would love to make a brief trip to see you and the baby, and just leave it at that. Just let her respond. No, like, I'll be brief, I'll be whatever, or I'll bring, just put it out there. And if she responds positively, then I'll make the trip. And if she responds the other way, I still have to, I just have to decide. I have decided, actually, that I'm going to be happy about what I can be happy about. And that is the fact that there's a new life in this world. I might never see her, or I might see her next month. I really don't know. But I'm just thrilled that they have this beautiful baby. And this is the first time that I'm a biological grandfather. So how could I be upset about that, you know?
Yep.
I mean, I could easily just think, holy crap, I can't believe that it took like 4 months for her to even tell my mother, and she deliberately didn't tell me, and then blah, 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 and blah, blah, you know. But it's like, you know, first of all, I remember when I was a witness, I mean, I never had that circumstance exactly, but I respected the whole disfellowshipping arrangement, even if there were times when I wasn't really sure if it was done right. You just have to assume it was. And so you treat people, never a family member, but you treat people the way you're supposed to, according to their directives. So I kind of always go back in my mind to, is she really being a heartless, evil daughter, like a complete disrespectful no, she's doing what I taught her, sort of, kind of, you know. So, you know, I just figure that I'm not going to be, I'm just not going to be miserable about it. I just can't see doing that. So, like I said, I'm happy that a new life is coming to the world, that maybe I'll get to see her. You know, that's basically it.
I like the way that you declared your choice about how you were going to feel about this, Gary. I think
Mm-hmm.
you wrote, I choose to be happy about it. A new life
Right.
has come into the world. That is called a frame. Now,
Mm-hmm.
an alternative frame might be, I am so offended that she didn't tell me. I am so offended that I'm not going to see this child. And what does that lead to? That leads to unhappiness. So to choose the upper road, taking the high road, if you like, is way powerful. And that's one of the things that we can all do to help us through the grief that's associated with separation. By the same count, I don't even get to see my grandchildren. I've got 4 grandchildren through my daughter, and she, one, will not contact me. If I send a parcel, it gets sent back with letters scrawled all over it, return to sender, so in black felt. So, you know, that's it's a pretty harsh response to my generosity. And so what I've accepted is that she's no longer in my life. I know she's there. I talk about it to people who ask, you know, how many children have you got? I've got 2 children, one of whom I never see, and I don't see her children either. And that's just part of my life. And I can see that that's how it is for you too. And it's something you've chosen. You chose not to be in the witnesses. And I make no judgment on that. How you choose to live your life is up to you. And by the same token, how somebody else chooses to live their life is up to them. My reframe on my daughter's situation is that I'm proud of her that she has had the gumption to choose how she wants to raise her children and choose who she has in her life, even if it means that I'm not part of that. So she's adult enough to be able to do that. I may not agree with her logic, but that's not my business. That's her business. And that's really where it comes to with live, you know, somebody who's still alive and you're grieving for not being able to see them. But the biggest and best thing you can do for them is to admire them for the choices they've made and make your own choices about how you live. And that's what you've done.
Mm. Right.
Is there anything?
It's very much a choice. And it's also the way I decided to contact her. And again, I'm not boasting. I'm not a genius, you know, and I have a coach sitting next to me, my girlfriend, who's really good at sizing these things up and being practical about it. I made a deliberate choice not to be confrontational. This is not the time, in my opinion, was not the time to bring up anything about beliefs or attitudes toward the witnesses or against the witnesses. I mean, she knows I'm not in. There's nothing I have to say to reinforce that and to tell her why or you know, criticize her for shunning me, and because believe me, there's a lot more to the story, and there's a lot more hurt below the surface
Mm.
that I'm even hinting at. But it's just not the time for it, and I always say it's like backing a wild or an animal, let's say a pet dog, not even a wild animal, but backing a dog into a corner.
Mm.
It's not a good idea, and you're
Yep.
not going to get a good result. You're not going to be happy when you back a dog into the corner. Not to compare my daughter with a dog, but it's the same thing when we kind of confront people boldly, and there's times to do that. I'm not saying there isn't, but when we kind of back them into a corner, they're going to get defensive, and it's not going to end well. So I made a choice to just say as tactfully and lovingly as possible a simple statement. I'm really happy for you, proud of you, the baby's beautiful, and I'm going to say in a month or so I'd like to visit, and leave it at that. So
Keep it
that's
simple.
the way I approach it. Yeah, just make it simple, and don't give them anything to get excited about.
And don't give them anything to feel offended about. So
Right.
what you've done is been humble, is the word I think that's best to use. You've maintained your humility, and that comes across really, really well to somebody who is feeling the potential of offense. So if you stay humble and you keep within yourself, in other words, you're staying within your own aura, if you want to look at it that way. You're keeping yourself intact and just putting out nice stuff for her, and she's responded really nicely to it.
Yeah, and it's nice that you said that, because again, I could say, well, really, has she responded nicely? Not really. She didn't tell me how much the baby weighed. She didn't say how long her labor was. All the things that mothers can't stop talking about when their friends visit and everything. They just can't stop. All she did was give me what. So I could say, as you said before, I could say, well, no, I don't like her reaction, but you know what? Just be grateful for the way she did react. It was really sweet in a way.
That's precisely the point, because the other thing is that she needn't have reacted. My daughter never reacts to me. I send her gifts. She doesn't react other than to send them back, which is like a slap in the face, really. And so I get my news via my mother and via my son, who both have occasional contact with her, neither of whom approve of what she's done, of course, but nobody, it seems, is able to get through to her with regard to my point of view. So, all right, yes. So ultimately, it's up to me to maintain my own integrity. That's the only thing I can do. I just hold my own space, and that's all anybody can do, is hold their own space, and then seek counsel elsewhere from a friendly source, whether it's a coach or a good friend or another relation. It's nice that you've got the relationship with your mother, because that's helpful, and it's wonderful that you've got your own coach by your own side. I think that's very useful too. So I think the key really is not to stay silent on this, to speak to somebody who's relevant, not to the person who's being the aggressor. And then when you do speak to the person who's being an aggressor, you do so with humility, and that way they can maintain their integrity within their own bubble. If that makes sense. So thank you, Gary. Sure. That was a fabulous example and perfect timing for this particular talk. Rocky, I see you're making quite a few comments. That's lovely. A lot of people make it about themselves indeed, and it's about respecting people. I totally agree with you. Well done. Yeah,
because I think that in any situation where there's differences of opinion and hurt feelings or what have you, at least one person has to take the high road, because if you're both duking it out, it's just going to end up in a bloody pile, So
Yes.
somebody has to do it, somebody has to set the example, and I can't see the witnesses ever doing that because they don't understand what unconditional love is. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate what you said about humility. I mean, that's part of it too, making that choice.
Yep. And I think it's a beautiful example of how you can grow, develop your own personality. I call it personal development. Grief is a wonderful personal development coach, whether you like it or not. It does provide an opportunity for you to change how you're thinking. It's something we don't learn when we're at school. It's something we have to learn either from other people or go to a coach or a lecture or whatever to learn how to do personal development. There are plenty of opportunities out there. One of my, let's say, one of my developmental breakthroughs was through doing something called the Landmark Forum. I don't know if anybody else has heard of that, but that's a worldwide outfit for teaching people how to find themselves and how to start reacting from a sense of integrity and humility rather than wildly lashing out and being a child, basically. So that's one option. Yeah. Now, Gary, did you have to go at all, or do you need to move on? Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Well, just another thing that you reminded me of because of your situation with your daughter, kids and grandchildren. I don't remember if you said 2 daughters or what, but I think you said 2 daughters.
A daughter and a son, yeah.
A daughter.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is that there are times when it really seems like there are just 2 options with something, and one of the options you don't know if it's going to be successful or not. You just don't know. You can only hope. Then the other option is most likely not going to work. So which one would you pick? I think you'd go with the one that has some doubt if the other one that is more of a sure option is a bad option. So like with your daughters, you're doing all these wonderful things, sending them things and this and that. I mean, I would, I choose to do it differently because I just don't think that overdoing it in my case is going to help because they'll be convinced I'm a lunatic, But
just to clarify, I only did it once, and I've never done it since. Yeah.
Okay, but the point is, I mean, in your attitude and what you don't do, that is being confrontational and all that kind of stuff. Well, someday maybe it'll pay off, but unfortunately, sadly, it might not. But the thing is, if you do it the wrong way, you can be sure that it's not going to work. So why would you take that option?
Exactly. Just to reframe it, I call it there's one with hope and there's one without hope.
Right.
So
exactly.
Which one do you choose? Choose hope.
Right.
That's my choice anyway.
And I think I like the way you brought humility into it because I sometimes wonder, I mean, another way to look at it is, well, you got to let them know that, how you feel and this and that, and you got to set boundaries, all of which is true. You do have to set boundaries, but there are times when it's, I don't know, is it really just the fact that you just have to say your piece and it's really not necessary to? And I can't say when that's the case and when it's not. It's everybody's personal observation, but it's, I think sometimes you just have to stand back and say, if I were my daughter or my son or whomever, and I was still a witness, how would I respond? And I think we know the answer to that every time because we were, that's what we were, So don't do it that way. If you knew it wouldn't have worked with you, don't do it with them.
Yeah. It's called empathy.
Right.
When you can put yourself in someone else's shoes, that's called empathy. And that is another very, very powerful tool. So maintaining your humility and feeling the empathy, they go together hand in hand. And when you put those 2 things together, you can either pray or you can conjoin whatever it is. It's a unification and making things whole. So humility and empathy are probably the two biggest skills to develop in terms of managing the grief of separation.
Yes. And I would just add to that humility and those things are not mutually exclusive with setting boundaries and your own integrity. They're not mutually exclusive. They have to all balance
Absolutely.
each other.
In fact, setting boundaries is a third part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you've got your we've talked about that before, and when you've set yourself some boundaries, once you've got your values, you can set your boundaries, and then you can afford to be humble and you can afford to have empathy because you're whole. You know who you are, and when you know who you are, you have power, and nobody can take that power away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done it, Gary, and you should be very proud of yourself the way you've handled this.
Well, I suppose I am, but again, I've got a good coach sitting next to me, so
you can be proud of her too.
Yeah, I do need a little bit of. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I would have done it great by myself, but possibly not. So it always helps to have somebody that's the voice of reason.
Mm. And you're very fortunate. And there are plenty of coaches on the site. So nobody who's on Life After needs to worry about it. Talk to Shane, get a coach, and get that sorted if you haven't got somebody else that you can talk to. I think that would be my advice to everyone. Talk to someone, and talk to someone who can pull you back from the anger, the upset, the frustration, the grief. Grief, not so much, because I'll talk about grief more thoroughly shortly, but really those others, the anger, the sadness, the depression, and all those things that go alongside grief can be handled. Grief itself is a process, which I will talk about in just a moment. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Gary?
No, I just wanted to thank you for having me on. It was a nice surprise. I had just gotten home from an evening out on the town, and because it's about 11:30 here Mountain Time. So thanks a lot for having me on.
And thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Okay.
Gary.
All right.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Good night. Sleep
Good
well.
night.
Okay, thanks.
Bye. Some very nice points brought out there, Starter.
Yes, I think so. And if people can take something away from that, they'll find it easier to deal with the grief of separation. Grief in itself, though, as I say, it's not truly an emotion. Grief is a process. If you think of grief as a process, it makes it easier to handle. Sometimes emotions can be quite challenging if you don't understand what's going on inside of you. But grief is something that's simply a reaction and a response in the moment when you're missing somebody for whatever reason, whether they've died and they'll never come back, or whether you're separated because of you're part of a non-Jehovah's Witness group now, and they're still in. So whatever the reason for the grief, that is the process that you work through.
Yeah.
Now, what grief does to you is gives you a sense, an empty space inside that feels like loss. And the instant response is to feel sadness. And the sadness comes out as crying quite often. That's the most common response. When my son died, because I've had 3 children, and my elder daughter, and the youngest, who's a son, who's also got children, they're fine. But the one in the middle, he didn't tell us he was unhappy, and he took his own life when he was 16 years old. It's something I wouldn't wish on anybody, even my worst enemy. Not that I've got any, but it's a horrendous process, that process of grief. Because if it's a suicide, you ask yourself the questions: what did I do to contribute to that? And basically, within the first 3 days after he died, I did a lot of processing. I'd done a lot of self-development work, and I was able to forgive him for taking his own life, because that was a pretty big thing. And I made an active process of forgiving him. I also forgave myself for anything I may have done that triggered it. I was the last person to see him alive, which is it's a big burden to bear, because did I say something that triggered him? He did leave us a note which suggested that he wasn't happy about some aspects of his life, and he wished us all well, which is very gracious, but it didn't stop the grief and didn't stop the hurt that we all felt. I forgave all other people in the family and his friends, his teachers, the counsellors who didn't really do anything for him. I forgave, there's an outfit called the Youth One Stop Shop. I forgave them because they wouldn't come and see him. There was a whole bunch of people. I went through a process of massive forgiveness on that third day after he died. On the fourth day, we had his funeral. And I had got myself to a place where I felt comfortable enough to speak about him at the funeral itself, which I know a lot of parents can't do because it's just too grievous a process. But I've moved myself through the very, very worst of the grief in doing that forgiveness process. And that's the first thing I'd recommend for anyone who's had a death in the family of someone close and meaningful. And then the next thing I did was to give myself permission to feel the grief. Now, grief comes in waves. And if a wave of grief might be triggered by something like a conversation, a friend asking me about the grief, and I'd say, oh, excuse me now, I can feel the grief coming on. I'd get my handkerchief out. I'd have a damn good cry for about 2-3 minutes. I said, just wait, don't go away. I'm okay. And I allowed myself to cry. Tears poured from my eyes and made noises. I allowed those big belly sobs to come through. I spoke to my friends and let them know this is what I will do for some time yet. I'll have a bout of grief. And they got used to it. So even in a public place, I'd perhaps remove myself to the back of the room, have my experience, and then I could move back into the group and feel fine again. And in giving myself permission to have that, I think I helped everybody else feel more comfortable about this terrible crying that comes. You know, it's that's how deep it is, and you have to allow it to come out. It's like with any sadness, like any emotion, you have to manifest the emotion so that you feel it to the full. Let it come out, because if you hold it in, what happens? It turns into dis-ease, which is disease. It becomes a disease in the body. So dis-ease is what happens when you don't permit the grief to manifest. So my advice to anyone going through a grief process is to allow those moments to happen, but also be aware that once that moment's finished, you will feel, oh, I've had enough of crying now. And you can allow yourself to stop. You mop your face, you wash your face, whatever, go and splash cold water on your eyes. And then you come back and you can be your normal self again. And that was the magic of permitting myself to grieve, just letting other people know this is what's going to happen, and understanding that that's what it took. And I'm pleased to say that I got through it.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
So it's very obvious that women react differently than guys, men. They seem to keep it to themselves. They don't show their emotion. And quite often they will do something quite tragic. What would your advice be to a man, a guy who is not allowing the grief to come out?
See a coach. Absolutely see a coach. A coach or a counsellor who can help that emotion to come out, because if it's stuffed down, you're going to suffer later. It'll come out as some sort of dis-ease, and quite often cancer is here's how the process works. When you suppress an emotion of any sort, it causes stress in the body. Stress produces hormones. You've probably heard of adrenaline. You've probably heard of cortisol. Those two, cortisol in particular, is a very dirty hormone which leaves lots of horrible residues in the body. And the process the liver has to go through to get rid of cortisol is highly toxic. So if you've used much cortisol, cortisol will come out when you've run out of adrenaline. Okay. It's your fail safe. If the saber-toothed tiger is still running after you after 3 hours, then you're going to switch on the cortisol. Or if you're stuck up a tree because you know there's an animal at the bottom of the tree and you can't get down the tree, you're going to be stressed for longer than 3 hours, perhaps. So whatever it is that's causing your stress, even if you're working in an office and you've got stress around you for 8 hours a day, you'll be running on cortisol. Whatever triggers the cortisol is going to trigger inflammation in the body. Inflammation then turns into dis-ease, whether it be cancer or heart disease or whatever. So this is why it's so important to deal with emotions. And if you've got emotions stuck inside you, i.e. if you're a bloke who doesn't cry, some blokes cry, some do.
I do.
And if you don't cry, then you're locking it away and you'll suffer down the track. It won't be immediate, but it will happen.
Okay.
And so I urge anyone who has trouble in expressing their emotions to go and seek help. On the other hand, someone is over problem because that means you're not getting any rest from the emotions. And that needs treatment as well. And that's where you can start to do meditation to calm down those emotions. So it's really important, whichever way you swing, you need to, if you're on an extreme, you need to take action. If you're nicely balanced, and you can cry when you need and be happy when you need, not so much of a problem.
Right.
Right. Any questions?
No, I think that I was just looking at the aspect of a guy and how many guys do find it very hard to allow the tears and the emotion to come out. And that's why I asked that question.
Yeah. And you'll need to go to a grief counsellor, perhaps, right. or a grief coach.
Yep.
Although most life coaches will be able to deal with that. And there are all sorts of different ways to deal with it. One of the simplest is what we've done, what we talked about with Gary, and that's to reframe the situation. Now, if I suppress my emotions, how's that going to make me feel? Well, I might manage in the short term, but down the track, that's going to make me very unwell. What am I going to do about it? So one thing is using a punch bag. Get out the anger. That's right. Turn whatever emotion it is into an anger and punch it out. Or it might be going for a walk on a beach, or just in the countryside. Go and hug a tree. Allow the emotions to shift and change inside of you. Or see a life coach.
Yep. So what you've just said there, use a punching bag. Go
Not
see a life coach. No, not a person. Go to a life coach. And the third one, the middle one wasn't, it slipped my head.
Go for a walk, hug a tree.
Hug a tree. All those sorts of things, we've been discouraged for however long we've been in the J-Dubs.
So sad.
So if we've still got the mindset that we don't go to somebody, that we keep it in and we called it put the new personality on. We weren't allowed to really show our anger. So
but they did anyway.
Well, they did, yeah. So if we're still struggling with that, what's one way that we could plant a seed in our own mind that we should take the next step and do some of those things?
Ask yourself the question, who is going to hurt if I don't deal with this?
Right.
Who is going to be hurt?
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to hurt me? Because most likely it will. Down the track, there'll be dis-ease. And if you're constantly angry and you're not getting yourself sorted, who else is going to be hurt? The people you live with. Is your spouse a battered spouse? Are your children hurt? Are your parents hurt? So if you don't deal with it, then something is going to happen. And I've just got an echo now. I'm trying to think while my echo's repeating itself.
We can't hear the echo, so you're right.
Okay. Do I need, if I move it up there? Or I can.
Yeah, I can't honestly hear it, so.
Okay. I will speak more slowly so that I can cope with the echo.
Okay, so that's nice and practical, asking ourselves those questions.
Who's going to be hurt if I don't take action?
Yep. Who should, when you think about the list of questions, who should be at the top of that list?
The only person you can make a difference to is yourself.
Right.
The only way you can make a difference to somebody else is by making a difference to yourself. If you're angry and you take it out on someone else, two people are going to suffer, yourself and the other person. If you deal with yourself and you don't need to take it out on somebody else, and you can be kind to the other person, two people are going to win, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So ignoring it doesn't make it go away, not in the long term. It just adds to more, it leads to more strife, more pain, more discomfort, and more grief. So I urge people to take action one way or another. If you've got any questions, flick it to the webpage. It's so important to ask the questions.
Yep.
So important to seek help. We're not designed to do this on our own. Robinson Crusoe even had Man Friday. His man he called Friday simply because he arrived on a Friday.
Yeah, that's right.
But he had someone. And people.
Well, Tom Hanks had a big soccer ball, didn't he, or a volleyball or something when he was marooned on the island. So
yes, you've got to have someone to talk to, even if it's an item of fantasy.
Yeah.
If you can find yourself an imaginary friend, that's fantastic.
Yoda.
Most people. Oh yeah. I can see your ears growing already.
Yeah. That's why they're covered. Okay, so that's a nice practical thing that we could encourage. And guys, please don't feel ashamed. We're not here to judge you. We're here to support.
In fact, if I can say here, a woman is more likely to judge a guy negatively if he doesn't show his emotions. A woman loves to see a man expressing himself in a kind and humble way. That's a tip.
That's a tip.
Guys,
okay.
That's a tip.
Well, I hadn't thought about that. Why is that the case?
Because women need to be loved.
Okay.
A man's job is to make his if you like, in a partnership where there's a man and a woman. Let's be really precise here. Yep. A man's job historically has been to make the woman happy. The woman's job is to be the queen, to be put on that pedestal and to behave in a happy way. Then the guy will always be happy. When a woman's not happy, a guy is at his unhappiest.
So the saying, happy life, happy wife, to do that saying. And I just noticed some of the comments coming in. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely, Astarte.
Thank you, Rocky.
Okay, so maybe we should just move on. Isn't it weakness for a guy to show emotions?
Why would you say that?
I'll just use the word because. Why would I say that? I guess the way we're brought up sometimes from old school thinking.
And is it wise?
Are you asking me questions now? Is it wise?
Yeah. I'm being a coach now.
Being a coach, is it wise?
Is it wise to not show your emotions?
You might be here for a while I think about that one.
Okay, well, let's short circuit that. Usually it is unwise to not show your emotions. However, there are moments when it's a good idea not to show your emotions. If you've got somebody holding a gun to your head, you might be better just to stay quiet and wait till you're told what to do and just do as you're told. All right? Yes, you'll be scared, but the only emotion you'll probably show is wide-eyed fear. Whereas if you're in a loving relationship and you don't show your emotions, that's not wise.
Yep.
Because your partner, male, female, whatever they are, in this day and age, it could be anything, they will not be able to love you as fully if you're not able to express how you feel back in response to their emotions.
Yep.
Let's do a little role play here. I think we've got a few minutes. A bit of a role play. Let's, just for the sake of this exercise, say we're partners. You're keeping a po face and I've got something I want to deal with. Okay, Shane, why didn't you do the dishes when you said you'd do the dishes? I'm feeling pretty annoyed about that.
Not going to tell you.
That's going to lead to quite an argument. I'm going to get really upset with you.
Yep.
And I might throw something at you if you keep responding without any emotion, because it's making me feel out of control. And I'm just an ordinary person who hasn't been through personal development and doesn't know how to deal with this. Okay.
Yep.
So you staying way too calm there has upset the other partner. Do you see that? And also, you're being cut off. Oh, yeah, you're still processing that. So, okay.
Well,
it takes a moment to process.
Like Gary said, knucklehead guys, when I was an elder, it was very useful to keep a poker face, I'll say that.
And as a coach, one does.
Yep.
It's more appropriate because a coach is not meant to be showing a response. We're not meant to be judging. We're just there as a leader. I really like what you said there, Rocky. Vulnerability is being brave. So if you let go and show your emotions, that is much braver and much more courageous than holding this poker face in an inappropriate moment.
Inappropriate moments.
Well, an appropriate moment for a po face is as a coach.
Right.
When you're being a radio or doing these interviews, then having no emotion is actually quite a useful space because you're in a moment of inquiry. So you have learned how to keep this poker face. I mean, I know you of old, so I know you're very good at this poker face. However, it doesn't serve when you're having an interaction with another person, which does become emotional in one way or another.
That means I've got to change then.
You see, you're showing an emotion there. You're showing cynicism. The sneer was really strong.
Good.
But tell me, is cynicism a useful emotion?
I suppose in some places it is.
Absolutely it is. Yeah, it's a very good answer. There are places for these emotions. That's why we've got them. If they were useless, we wouldn't have them. Nature is brilliant. So if you're not showing emotions at all, is that useful?
Could be.
In certain circumstances, it could be. But if you never show emotions, is that useful?
No.
Well, it depends if you're feeling them or not.
That's right.
So if you're feeling emotions and you're not showing them, that means you're pushing them down, you're suppressing them, and that is a cause of stress.
Yep.
But overly showing emotions can also be stressful. So it's about finding that place and bringing yourself back into balance. And I think that's where coaching can be useful.
Right. Yeah, just why I brought up the male aspect. When you go, like I go to farms with my job, you see the guys, you see older guys in particular, some of them don't have any emotions at all because that's what they're used to. And as younger people,
but you shoot one of the farm dogs and you'll see emotion.
Oh, you will.
That's right.
You will. So, but a lot of the time when it's like that, and the example that you used with regards to doing the dishes, you watch them in their own environment, and they just sit there, poker face, and the woman, in most cases, gets quite upset.
She tears her hair out. Yes, she's really upset by it. So holding that poker face in an inappropriate moment is not useful for anybody, and it doesn't build relationships.
Yep. Okay, that's good. So just going back over, we sort of took a side street, as it were, but it was part of grief and not showing emotions and things like that. So let's just do a bit of a summary. What would be the first step if we're suffering from grief and separation?
Forgive yourself.
Okay.
For anything you might have done. Acknowledge it. Acknowledge the pain that you may have caused, because you may indeed have caused some pain. So acknowledge it and forgive yourself. Forgive the other person for having the reaction they've had. If you like, make a list of the pros and cons of the situation.
Okay, cool.
Just as a full analysis, if that's the sort of thing that helps you, make that list. What's the good that's come out of this? What's the bad that's come out of this? And then decide what you're going to focus on. So forgiveness, refocus, reframe, and recover. Ooh, that was quite good, wasn't it? What did I say? And the last thing, of course, is to allow that grief to manifest. Let yourself cry. Let the tears fall. Let the deep, heavy sobs come out. Release the emotion.
Yep.
When you laugh and you don't, when you feel amused and you don't laugh, it doesn't have the same effect as having a good belly laugh. That good belly laugh is exactly the same thing as sobbing with grief. Right. It's allowing the emotion to come out.
Yep.
And that's so important.
Well, we've really appreciated your time having a chat with Gary and with us today. And we thank you very much for being able to help us with regards to all those little practical things that can help us to cope. We want to say thank you for those ones who are on the live stream and for those who are going to watch it a little later. But for the week coming, we have an interesting guy. And before I tell you about that guy, we'll just play a bit of a video. So our character, and he is a character. He's actually from New Zealand. He's a former elder. We're going to learn a lot about him, or at least the stuff that he tells us. And we're going to find out what he's up to these days after being a Jehovah's Witness for a very long time. His name's Paul, from Hamilton here in New Zealand. And we look forward to knowing a little bit more about him on our section moving on, where we look at different ones who have had a history with the J-Doves, what they're doing now, and some of the goals that they are looking forward to being able to have in the future. Thank you once again, Astarte. Certainly appreciated your subject. And once again, for those ones who are going to watch this later, who have been here during the live stream, thank you for coming along. Keep safe. Have an enjoyable day, evening, wherever you may be, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks once again, and for now, we'll catch you later. Bye.